Hey, you guys, welcome to Unit 1.2. This is going to be our second set of notes in Unit 1, and we're going to be looking at order of operations. Pretty straightforward, just a refresher to go over our steps. Okay, we're pretty familiar with PEMDAS, but I do like this a little bit better. It instead of the P, it says G, and that's because it's grouping symbols. P is parentheses, and parentheses is a grouping symbol. So by using G, we're including all of the grouping symbols. Okay, so one grouping symbol that they did not add here, which I want you to be familiar with, is the absolute value. So if you want to write that somewhere, that looks like an 11, but it's the absolute value symbol. And then the other thing that if you want to highlight is fraction bars. Okay, fraction bars. A fraction bar is a grouping symbol. It tells us to do this, for example, right here. This is telling us that we need to handle the top before we can do anything in combining the top and the bottom, our numerator and our denominator for this fraction. All right, so let's take a look at number one. Just a quick refresher. We're not going to go too in depth. For our grouping symbols, we're going to start with our innermost. So that would be this right here. And this is telling me that I need to handle the exponent inside as well. So this negative in this case is going to stay. We're actually just going to do 2 to the power of 3, not negative 2 to the power of 3. We're going to add that negative on last. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Sorry, this is supposed to be an 8. Bring everything else down. And then we have 11 minus 8. It's going to be 3. Bring the rest of my problem down. So I have 29 minus 3 plus 6 to the power of 2 divided by 4. Now, if we look at this again, we're going to go back over here, look to our left. The next step, we're actually going to go to exponents. We did handle an exponent in here, but we had to get rid of the grouping symbol. 6 times 6 is 36. Bring everything else down. Okay, let's cut it off. All right. And then we have subtraction, addition, and division. So looking over here, we need to handle our multiplication and division first. 36 divided by 4 is going to be 9. Bring everything else down. Now from left to right, it tells us right here from left to right, 29 minus 3 is 26. And then 26 plus 9 is 35. And we're done. All right, let's take a look at number 2. This is our absolute value symbol right here. So this is actually a grouping symbol, which tells us we need to handle this first. The absolute value of 8 is just telling us negative 8, I'm sorry, how many units away is negative 8 from 0 on the number line? Well, negative 8 is 8 units from 0. Just as a refresher, I can make a little table if you need that. Okay, so here's my number line up here. So how many units from negative 8 to 0? That's what we're trying to figure out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, one way that you could always remember is whatever's inside these lines, inside the absolute value brackets, is always just going to be the positive number to that. So since it's negative 8, it's just going to be positive 8 comes down. Then we're going to go ahead and bring everything else down. Okay. Now, according to our chart, we need to do our exponents. So 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 62. I'm sorry, 64. 64 minus 8 times 6 divided by 16. All right, so be careful here. Okay, so remember, we're moving from left to right, and we have both multiplication and division. So since multiplication from left to right is going to be first, we need to handle that first. So 8 times 6 is negative 48 divided by 16. Okay, we could bring our 64 down, but remember we need to handle the multiplication division first. So 48 divided by 16 is going to be 3. And it is a negative 3, right? Because there's a negative symbol right here. So we're going to bring that down. So now we have 64 minus 3 is going to be 61. And there's our answer. All right, so we have a few grouping symbols here. If I can highlight them, we have our absolute value symbols, we have our parentheses, and we have this fraction bar. So we have 3 sets of grouping symbols, and what we need to do is find the innermost first. Since the absolute value is innermost, we're going to deal with that. 10 minus 12 is going to be negative 2. Need a pen. Negative 2. And the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. So I'm going to bring that down. Bring everything else down. Okay. And now we're going to still handle our grouping symbols. We can't move on to this exponent yet until this is done. So we have 5 times 5 is 25. So now and then we have 25 plus 2 is going to be 27. So now I can rewrite this as 7 minus 27 all over 9. Now I can handle this. 2 to the power of 2 is 4. It's going to be minus 4. So 7 minus 27 is going to be negative 20, right? We keep the negative symbol since the 27 is larger. And then 9 minus 4 is 5. So now I have an answer of negative 4. Alrighty, so let's talk about evaluating expressions when we're plugging in numbers. You guys should be pretty familiar with this, but I just want to remind you, a good habit to do is use your parentheses when you're plugging in these numbers. And that's because some of these are going to have a negative symbol with them. And so when you plug them in, if you're going to be adding a negative number, we need to remember to combine those signs. So let's go ahead and put 3 times b is negative 4 to the power of 2. And then c is 8 plus 12. Alrighty, so let's take care of this exponent. 4 times 4 is 16. And then 16 times 3. And then we have 8 plus 12 is going to be 20. So 3 times 16 is 48. And then 48 is going to be over 20. We need to reduce this. They both can be divided by 4. So 48 divided by 4 is 12. 20 divided by 4 is 5. And that is the simplest term. All right, let's take a look at number 13. So let's go ahead and start with our parenthesis. So we have w is going to be 2 to the power of 3 minus 4 times v, which is 18. All of this over the square root of 2 times 18. Okay, well, let's start with our exponents. So our exponent is going to be 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. So this is going to be 8 minus 4 times, 4 times 18 is 72. Now, notice I did multiply this before I did the bottom, and remember, we can do that because of this grouping symbol here. Okay, so this tells us that we can do the top part and the bottom part independently, so we don't have to go back and forth. Okay, all right, and let's go ahead and 18 times 2. So this is going to be 36. And we know the square root of 36 is 6. So I'm going to rewrite that down here. 8 minus 72 is going to be negative 64. And we can reduce both of these by dividing by 3. I'm sorry, dividing by 2. So 64 divided by 2 is 32, negative 32. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. So the final answer is negative 32 over 3. Alrighty. So these are pretty straightforward. We're just combining like terms. I'm not really gonna I'm not going to take much time into that. You guys are pretty familiar from geometry how to do that.